العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. طيب, in the last class we talked about the pillars and the wajibat of Hajj. Who can explain the difference between the wajibat of Hajj, the obligations of Hajj, and the arkan of Hajj, or the pillars of Hajj? Who can explain it? Two, three, 4, 5. Abdullah, تفضل.
The pillars are action done inside the item being discussed, and if it's not done, it nullifies the act itself, whereas the wajibat, whereas the others, they can be made up for.
Excellent. So the arkan, Jazakallah khair, as the Prophet mentioned, the arkan are those acts that are within, or those actions that are within the act itself. So if we use the salah, reading Surah Al-Fatiha is a pillar. If one doesn't read the Fatiha, then their salah is invalid. طيب. As for the wajibat, they are those acts that are obligatory. You must recite, you must do or say. Like if you don't say, or if you don't do these wajibat, then you can rectify it. For example, with sujood sahwi. So if you forget the middle tashahhud mathalan, you can carry on with your salah. Obviously you can't go back. You can carry on with your salah, and then at the end you pray sujood sahwi. So that's the same for the pillars of Hajj and the obligations of Hajj. طيب. What are the pillars of Hajj? Jabir.
Coming to a state of ihram.
Starting this state, and how does a person get into the state of ihram?
Near to ihram. Makes a niyah.
Okay, and then? Does he have to say anything?
Oh yeah, the talbiyah.
Whichever Hajj he's doing?
Standing at Arafah.
The standing of Arafah, excellent. So the ihram from the miqat is a pillar. طيب. Standing Yawm al-Arafah. What about if a person sits down in the Mount of Arafah?
Yeah, just
being in the boundaries of Arafah. طيب. Tawaf. How many tawafs are there? 3. What are they? Tawaf al-Qudum, excellent. Which is the excellent. The arrival tawaf. Excellent. That's the pillar. That's where Jabir comes in, and you're helping Jabir. So that's the tawaf of, that's the pillar. And the last one?
The last one is tawaf al-wada'.
And that is excellent, when you're leaving Makkah. طيب. So with 3. What's the last one? Sa'i. Excellent. What about the wajibat of Hajj? What are the wajibat of Hajj? Without looking, what are the wajibat of Hajj? Technically speaking, you shouldn't look. And the reason why you shouldn't look, because the pillars or the wajibat, we studied them what? Last week, sir? So last Saturday is when we studied the wajibat and the pillars. You should have had a quick glance, and you should have read the wajibat and the pillars before last Saturday's class. And then during the class, you obviously studied it for about an hour or so, sah? That's 2 times, sah? When you went home, or somewhere during the week, you should have revised it. So that's 3 times that you should have looked at the wajibat. So the wajibat, however many they are, if you get about 3 or 4 or 5 right, that's understandable. You can work with that, because the rest you can make up when you're revising. Lakin, if you don't know any of the wajibat, that's wrong. And صدقني, the revising your knowledge is a lot more important than taking new knowledge. Revising whatever you've studied takes precedence over and is a lot more important than studying new knowledge. Because when you're revising, whatever you're studying, mathalan, it's equivalent to you being on a journey. You walking through a park, a garden, طيب, and you're picking fruits. When you pick the fruit, you're going to have to store that fruit. You're going to have to put it somewhere. You're going to have to put it in your bag, صح? طيب. What about if you just put it in your top pocket and then it falls off and you carry on, you pick more, but the others are falling off? Will you benefit? Will you come out with enough fruit or the fruit that you want? Or the amount of fruit that you want? No. Like if you're revising knowledge as you go along, that knowledge will stay with you. It's like you're building and building and building and building. Whereas if you leave off revising and you concentrate more on the new class or attending a new class or learning new knowledge, then you're going to find that after years and years of studying, you're not really well grounded in what you're studying or what you've been studying. And this happens it happens everywhere. Even in Islamic universities, you find that a lot of students, they don't study the curriculum from the beginning of the term. At the end, about 2-3 weeks before the exam, they will start to look for the notes. And they will look for the book. Some of them don't, although they're very few, but some of them will ask you, what book are we studying 2 weeks before the exam? Although we've been studying it for about 5 months. Like when that person, even if he gets an A star in the exam, that's not knowledge that he can count on. So it's extremely important that you revise wherever you've studied. طيب. From the wajibat, al-ihram min al-miqat. Putting the ihram on from the miqat. And the ihram is not the niyyah. It is getting rid of all of your clothing and going into the ihram, the 2 white gowns that we shall see. طيب. والوقوف بعرفة إلى الغروب and remaining in Arafah until the sun sets. Remaining in Arafah until the sun sets. And also al-mabitu laylat al-nahr bi Muzdalifah, staying in Muzdalifah. So for example, today was Yawm Arafah. Tonight, when the sun sets, we head out of Makkah and we stay in Muzdalifah for that whole night. طيب. And also remaining in Mina for the nights of Ayyam Tashriq, the 10th, 11th and 12th, and the 13th if you intend to stay. And also throwing the stones, all 3, on the 10th, on the 11th, 12th and the 13th if you stay. Like on the 10th, what do you throw? 7, and you throw it in the last pit, the one closest to Mina, furthest from Mina. The one closest to Makkah and furthest from Makkah, from Mina. وَالْحَلْقُ تَقْصِيرٌ, and also cutting the hair, trimming the hair or shaving the head. طيب. The types of Hajj are what? How many types are there? 3. What are they? Tamattu', Qiran and Ifrad. طيب. Which one do you need to slaughter a sheep? No, not sheep. Which one is a requirement to slaughter a camel? It's a requirement to slaughter a camel in which one? It's a requirement to slaughter a camel in which one out of these 3? That I'm not talking about the 3 types. I'm talking about which one is it wajib to slaughter a camel?
If you're not in
Hamza. Tamattu'.
Yeah, if you're not in Makkah, if you're not in the Haram, then you have to do. If you leave, you have to do in Tamattu'.
La. The question is, which one is it wajib for you to slaughter a camel? None. So none. You don't have to. So the fact that you're confused is good, because that's not something you've studied, and it's not something that exists. So it shows that you've understood what we're studying. طيب. محظورات الإحرام. Huh?
We were confused before
Yeah.
about the three types of Hajj.
Yeah.
Ifrad, right?
Ifrad. لا, they got that right. Ifrad, tamattu' and qiran. There's the three types.
I looked at my notes and I have not made any notes with regards to slaughtering on Ifrad. Do we have to slaughter?
لا, Ifrad doesn't have a slaughter. No. But the reason why I wanted to mention the camel is because the fact that you're confused shows you've understood what's been studied so far. طيب. محظورات الإحرام. So now that we've gone and done Hajj, we've studied that. We've studied the three types of Hajj. We've studied the pillars of Hajj and we've studied the wajibat. طيب. There are things that are called محظورات الإحرام. Things that make your ihram deficient. Things that cause your ihram to be nullified. Although it's one. Like there are other things that can corrupt your ihram, which require that you pay a ransom or a fine. Now these things, they are meant to, or the Hajj, the person that's performing Hajj, is meant to stay away from them whilst in a state of ihram. You already know what a state of ihram is. صح? It's when you say لبيك اللهم حجا مثلا and you're in a state of ihram. There are things that you should avoid. There are things that you should avoid. Today's lesson, we're going to talk about some of these things that or we're going to hopefully talk about all of the things that you should avoid, inshallah, when in Hajj. طيب. يقول الشيخ رحمه الله ويجتنب المحرم وقت إحرامه حلق الشعر. So the muhrim, the person that is in a state of ihram, whilst he's in a state of ihram, there are things that are wajib upon him, that he has to stay away from. The first is halq al-sha'r. The first is shaving the hair. Shaving the hair or trimming the hair. Shaving the hair or trimming the hair. It is not permissible for the haji, for the person performing Hajj, to shave the hair or to trim the hair whilst in a state of ihram, unless it's the time that they're about to leave the ihram. Unless they're about to leave the ihram. Okay? So when we were talking about the wajibat, we were saying that you have to shave the hair or trim the hair, صح? طيب. Like when is that? That's at the end of your ihram. At the end of your ihram. The impermissibility that we're talking about now is not to do with the end of the ihram. It's to do with during the ihram. Right from the beginning up until you're about to get out of the state of ihram. So مثلا when you put your ihram on the 8th day, the 9th day in Arafah, in Mina, in the night of Muzdalifah, all of these times it's impermissible for you to take anything away from your hair, to shave your hair or to cut your hair. طيب. That's based on the verse of Allah Jalla wa Ala, وَلَا تَحْلِقُوا رُؤُوسَكُمْ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْهَدْيُ مَحِلَّهُ. طيب. Allah Jalla wa Ala commands the believers to not shave or prohibits them from shaving their heads up until the hadi or the blood of the hadi reaches its place, meaning up until the sacrifice is done, meaning on the 10th day. So that is the earliest that a person can possibly shave or trim the hair. Now these things that are not permissible to do, they're of three types, and write these down. They're things that are impermissible for the men, things that are impermissible for the women, and things that are impermissible for both of them. Things that are impermissible for both of them. طيب. So حلق الشعر يعني for both of them. You can't shave your head or you can't trim your hair whilst in a state of ihram. That's the first one. The second one is وتقليم الأظفار, and to clip your nails. It is not permissible to clip your nails. So firstly, the reason why a person is not allowed to shave their hair, shave their head or trim their nails is because there's some sort of enjoyment and pleasure in it. And when a person is in a state of ihram, he's meant to avoid that enjoyment and that pleasure because you're in a state of ibadah, that requires full concentration. طيب. تقليم الأظفار, so trimming your nails or clipping your nails. طيب. A person can ask, what is the amount? What is the amount? So for example, مثلا, if I pluck one hair out, does that mean that I have to, or that I have fallen into the mahdurat, meaning I have to have a fidya? Or if I clip one nail, what's the amount? The scholars, they talk about this masala, what's the amount? Some say 3, some say 4, and so on. Lakin, it goes back to the custom. What is considered as enjoyment? What is considered as removing adha or harm from a person's head? Is it a small amount, or is it an amount that is a standard sort of maybe half of the head or so on? As long as it is more than half or similar to that or around that, or that can be considered that this person has shaved his head, then that is from the mahdurat of ihram, one of the things that spoil one's ihram. Mathalan, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had hijama done on him whilst in a state of ihram. Hijama done whilst in a state of ihram on his head. Now obviously you all know that in order for hijama to be done, you must shave a small part of the head, right? Or the part that the hijama is being done on, it has to be shaved. So if a person removes a small amount, 2, 3, 4, 10, small amount, then it doesn't nullify the person's ihram. Likewise, the cutting of the nails. If a person, mathalan, one of his nails breaks and he needs to cut it off, otherwise it's going to get worse or the pain is going to increase, then it's fine if they do so. It is fine if they do so. That's the second one. Now, what is the dalil for that, or the trimming of the nails? The scholars use qiyas. They use qiyas, analogy. So just like it's impermissible to shave your head or to trim your hair, then likewise, trimming the nails carries the same meaning, or clipping the nails carries the same meaning as the shaving of the head. طيب. The Shaykh says thirdly, وَلُبْسُ الْمَخِيطِ إِن كَانَ رَجُلًا. وَلُبْسُ الْمَخِيطِ إِن كَانَ رَجُلًا. لُبْسُ الْمَخِيط, wearing clothing that is stitched. Meaning wearing clothing that we're used to or that we normally wear. مثلا thobes, turbans, hats, socks, trousers, things that have the shape of the body, where a person wears as normal, like we wear the thobes now, or these sorts of scarves, imamas. These things are impermissible for a person to put on whilst they're in a state of ihram. These things are impermissible to put on whilst they're in a state of ihram. And the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he clarified that in the long hadith in which he prohibited the Muslims from wearing these sorts of things, in which the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited the Muslims from wearing trousers, turbans, and so on. Wearing trousers, turbans, those thobes, the Moroccan thobes with the hood. All of these, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited. He said, "La sallallahu alaihi wasallam, la talbisul qamisa, wala sarawil, أو ولا السرويلات ولا العمائم ولا البغانس إلا أن يكون أحد ليست له نعلان فليلبس الخفين أو فليلبس الخفين وليقطع أسفل من الكعبين." طيب. So in this hadith, the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم prohibited the hujjaj, the person in a state of ihram, from wearing any undergarment, any thobe, any t-shirts, any trousers, any ama'im or turbans or thobes with garments. Lakin that is only for the men. So when the scholars say وَلَبْسِ الْمَخِيطِ, when you hear now in the books of fiqh, وَلَبْسُ الْمَخِيطِ or وَلُبْسُ الْمَخِيطِ, literally when you translate it, it means and not wearing anything that has stitches. Lakin they derive that from this hadith. Because all of these things that the Messenger ﷺ prohibited when a person is in a state of ihram have stitching, and they're formed or they're made in the shape of the human body. So from that they say that anything that has stitches, then you can't wear. That is stitched. Lakin, مثلا, a belt. A belt has stitching. Lakin you're allowed to wear the belt. you're allowed to wear the belt. Why? Because it is not something that is trimmed in there or is not shaped in the form of the human body. And also you may need to use it in order to hold your مثلا and hold the ihram up. Like in socks, you can't wear. Shoes, these sorts of shoes you can't wear. Sandals you can wear. Like in these sorts of shoes you can't wear. If you've got an option of wearing sandals. طيب. Obviously that's only for the men. As for the muhrima, meaning the woman, as for the muhrima, then she can't wear a niqab. The woman that's in a state of ihram, she can't wear a niqab. So women cannot wear a niqab whilst in a state of ihram, and they cannot wear gloves. And they cannot wear gloves. And they cannot wear gloves due to the prohibition of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Where? No, we're coming to that. We're not coming to that. We've already studied that. We said what? إن كان رجلا ولبس المخيط إن كان رجلا. So that specific one of the socks and the hats and all of that is specific to men. So they can wear socks and they have to wear the hijab. They have to cover their head. Yeah, but that is specific to men. Not wearing socks, ama'im, turbans and so on. That's specific to men. Like with regards to women, there's two things they can't do. They can't put a niqab on, and they can't put a what? Gloves on. Like it doesn't mean that they leave their face showing, nor does it mean they leave their hands out. Like it means that they just don't wear the niqab as it is. Like if they were to get a garment that just trails over and covers their face, then that's fine.
And their clothes should be long for the feet.
And they what?
Their clothes should be long so they cover their feet. Okay, so
as normal anyway, yeah. With the women, when it comes to the clothing, nothing changes. Apart from two things. The face, where they can't put a niqab on. But if they wish to cover their faces, then they can put a khimar on their faces. The Aisha radiallahu anha explained, she said, كُنَّا نُخَمِّرْ وُجُوهَنَا وَنَحْنُ مُحْرِمَاتٍ. We used to nukhmir, yani cover our faces whilst we were in a state of ihram. So what's prohibited for them is not the covering of the face, like it's the wearing of the niqab. The wearing of the niqab. Just like men are not allowed to cover their head, they're not allowed to cover their head with a form of niqab. Likewise with the gloves. Like if they've got their hands mathalan under the hijab, that's fine. But they can't wear the gloves. They can't wear the gloves. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she also mentioned that we would, whenever we would find ajanib men coming around, men that are not obviously their maharim, they would cover their faces. So what's prohibited for the women is to cover their head, or afwan, to cover their face with a niqab that has the shape that we're accustomed with. Is that understood with regards to the women, yeah? Like, as for wearing gold, as for beautifying themselves and so on, all of that is allowed, it's permissible for the women. It is permissible for the women. How many things do we have so far? 3. 4. What are they? The shaving of the head, cutting of the nails, which is for both men and women, and not wearing the clothes for the men. Not wearing clothes, thobes and so on, in a state, while it's in a state of ihram. That's only for the men. As for the women, with regards to that specific prohibition, they can't cover their faces with a niqab. And they can cover their face by using different garments and so on, a khimar to cover their face. And also, they cannot wear gloves. طيب.
the women should can wear jewelry and stuff like that. For the man, is allowed to wear like a watch or
Ahsant. Men are allowed to wear watches now. Watches and rings and so on. Men are also allowed to wear. And also even ID cards, the Hujjaj, they have ID cards. That's also fine. That's also fine. طيب. The next thing the Shaykh mentions, rahimahullah, is وَتَغْضِيَةُ رَأْسِهِ إِنْ كَانَ رَجُلًا. وَتَغْضِيَةُ رَأْسِهِ إِنْ كَانَ رَجُلًا. رجلا. And covering of the head if he is a man. The covering of the head. Meaning wearing a turban, wearing a hat, or anything that covers the head. The man is not allowed to cover his head, as we talked about in the last hadith where the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam لا تلبسوا القميص ولا السراويل ولا العمائم ولا العمائم. طيب. What about if a person uses an umbrella to cover his head from the sun? Who says shade? Shade, okay.
He's not wearing it.
No, he's not wearing it, he's using it as a shade. He's not wearing it on his head, like he's using it as a shade. That's fine. So that is also fine. وَالطِّيبُ رَجُلًا وَامْرَأَةٌ إن كان رجلا أو إن كان امرأة إن كانت امرأة. طيب. والطيب, and also fragrance, perfume. To put on perfume is not permissible whilst in a state of ihram. To put on perfume. And what is meant by perfume is either the spray that we use or the one that we use and it has normal perfume that a person intends to use as a perfume, as a fragrance to get to smell nice. That is what is prohibited. Lakin, a lot of Hujjaj obviously they think that you can't put مثلا shampoo. Shampoo has a scent, and almost every single type of soap has a scent. That is permissible to use because it's only a scent. You won't say I've put perfume on if you use a shampoo. If you use shampoo, you won't say I put perfume. Nor will you say if you use مثلا hand wash, you won't say I've just used perfume or I've put misk on myself or so on. La, it is not considered as perfume. It is only a scent which goes away within a few minutes anyway. So that is, it is permissible to use. And that's extremely important because some of the Hujjaj, they spend ages trying to look for soap without a scent. Sometimes they go through difficulties trying to find soap without scent. Right. Last question, and then we leave all the questions to the end. Go on. No, that's not permissible because you're using it as perfume. You're using it as perfume. There's a difference. طيب. And how to avoid that is what was from the sunnah or the sunan that a person does when they get to the miqat, just before they put their haram on, to trim their nails, to cut their hair, to put atar on, and so on. Not on their ihram, lakin on their body. So you can put everything you want on just before you go into the state of ihram. And even if that scent stays while it's still in a state of ihram, that's fine. That is fine. Lakin what is prohibited is you using the scent during the ihram. طيب, obviously, and that's the evidence for that is when the man that fell off his camel during the Hajj, and the Messenger ﷺ commanded them to wash him and to bury him and to shroud him and to bury him and not to put perfume on him. Where did we study that? What book did we study that in the past? Huh? Ghusl? La. The man that died in a state of ihram, and the Messenger ﷺ commanded the companions to wash him and to shroud him, to leave him as he was, and to bury him, and not to put perfume in janazah. Obviously, if a person died, then we will study it where? Kitab al-Janazah, Janaiz. طيب, the Shaykh says رحمه الله وكذا يحرم على المحرم قتل الصيد البري الوحشي المأكول والدلالة عليه والإعانة على قتله. طيب, the next thing that a person is not allowed to do while staying in a state of ihram is hunting. They're not allowed to hunt animals. They're not allowed to hunt animals that are land animals, that are wild animals. They're wild animals and they're land animals and they're animals that are permissible to eat. They're permissible to eat. مثلا birds. They're land animals, they're permissible to eat and people hunt them. طيب. لكن مثلا sheep. Is it permissible to eat or not? لا. Is it permissible to hunt sheep in the haram? Who hunts sheep anyway? No one hunt. People don't hunt sheep. طيب. طيب. What about tigers and lions? Hunting them in the haram, is it permissible or not? Is it permissible or not? Isma'u, listen. Listen to these quyud or these restrictions, and then you can answer whether you can hunt a tiger or not. قتل الصيد البري, land animal. Is a tiger a land animal? Yes. Al-wahshi, wild. Is it wild? Al-ma'kul, is it eatable? Do we eat it? لا, so it doesn't even come into the equation. طيب. وَالدَّلَالَةُ عَلَيْهِ, and to also point towards it. So مثلا, you can't be in a state of ihram, and you can't say to someone else, listen, there's a rabbit right over there, right? Hunt him. You can't say that to them because you're showing them. وَالْإِعَانَةُ عَلَيْهِ, the Shaykh says, وَالْإِعَانَةُ عَلَى قَتْلِهِ, and you can't help them. You can't say, method, here's the bow and arrow, quickly go and kill the game. You can't. And the evidence for that is the hadith of Abu Qatada radiallahu anhu. So there was a group of companions, and they were together. They were all in a state of ihram except for Abu Qatada. And then he saw the game, and he saw whatever it was that he wanted to. It was a zebra. He saw it and he wanted to kill it. So he said, pass me the bow and arrow. He was on his horse. He didn't want to get off. He said to them, quickly pass it to me so I can catch it. They said, Wallah, we're not going to help you because you know we're in a state of ihram. He quickly got off, got it, and then he caught it. So they were allowed to eat. The Messenger ﷺ allowed them to eat from it. Why? Because they did not help him, nor did they show him. Now Abu Qatada, it was permissible for him. Why? Because he wasn't in a state of ihram.